What is going on, the place community? We are here, and I have a very, very, very dear, and special friend of mine today, Clint. He is VP, Vice President, and Project Management of Bank of Oklahoma. Not only that, he was in ministry for multiple years. That is where I met him way back in the day. I think it was first time in Muskogee, Oklahoma, back in the early 2000s. And man, do I feel old every time I talk about that. But Clint Miles, sir, so happy to have you. How are you doing this evening?
Doing great. I really appreciate what you've done with your podcast, and even having Joel Wingo on there a few weeks ago. I think he came on your podcast.
Yeah.
He's an old friend, a dear friend. We went to college together as well. So seeing what you're doing for God and call of God in your life is great. And I listen, I'm just happy to be here, and hopefully something that we said could be an encouragement to the people. And so I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Absolutely. This has been I'm going to be honest. I was about to say a dream on my heart, but in this context, Clint, I'll be honest, I didn't see this coming. But it was something that I'm very glad was on the heart of God before it was on my heart. Always, I'm a relational person. I love to talk. I love to chat. I love fireside talks. Some of my best things. I'm living in the best time and season and fall and winter, right? And it's Thanksgiving and it's Christmas and it's all those times.
Wow.
That was always natural for me, being in front of people speaking. But being in this context, we're in 2024. We were talking about it a little bit before we pressed play here and recording on how this is the new venue. This is the new form by which people are learning, whether it's education. It's the new form of which people are being entertained.
Right.
I think all of the content is now being shifted, and I think it's kind of been trending that way, but especially since COVID, right? Everything now has just gotten so much more digitalized, and I think that it's a very powerful thing to still be able to connect to good friends and people that live miles and miles away. And me being in South Carolina and you being in my old lovely beautiful home place that I do still dearly love and miss in Oklahoma and everything. But
it's a good place. Don't stay away too long, Taylor. Don't stay away too long.
Oh, trust me, we have family knocking and calling every week. This you know well. My dad and my wife's side, a lot of family back in Oklahoma as well, who are still like counting down the days on when we're going to be moving back in their minds. So I get it. We got a lot of grandchildren they're missing.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, even this Thanksgiving we just had, I went to see my family. I grew up outside of Kansas City, Missouri. Okay. Incidentally, we'll give an introduction here in a minute. But there was some family I'd not seen in about 20 years, and it's not intentional that you don't at times go see family or with people. But man, I tell you, as the old timers used to say, it's crazy how time slips away. And it really does. And so I was really blessed to go see some family I had, and even go and see my father's grave who died many years ago. And so don't stay away too long. Make sure you come home and see those you love. It's a really important thing. I will tell you that.
It is. That is true. Very, 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 very true. Well, on that, sir, yes, go ahead and let the place with TM community know. Give us a proper good kind of an introduction, a little bit of a briefing of who Clint is, what you've been doing for the past couple of years, what you're currently doing right now, and then we're going to go ahead and we'll run it from there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Taylor. Right now, I am a senior project leader, or the VP of project management for the Bank of Oklahoma. And I have been there actually for a few years now, working as a project manager. But early on, before I got to this place, my journey really was in the area of ministry. I started out, working towards a bachelor's degree in Bible theology. I went to the same college you did. Actually, I'm a resident native of Missouri. As I mentioned, outside of Kansas City is where I came from. Went to Central Bible College, got a degree in theology from there, got involved in different ministry settings, youth pastor, different opportunities within the church context, if you will. Went on and got a master's degree from Southwestern Assemblies of God University in Texas. And got going there. And then I became ordained and continued ministry for a number of years. Essentially, I'd done a few places. I've worked at a few churches in Missouri. And then I kind of got to the place in my life where, my wife started to get hungry, Taylor. My kids wanted to have something to eat, and it wasn't quite that bad. But
Uh, yeah.
reality at some point, some cases will sit in, and it's
Yeah.
not intentional
Yeah.
at all. And so my wife told me one day, she said, Clint, she said, I know you love preaching. And she's like, you do a really good job. And, I love you for it. She says, but I filled out an application for you. She said, I want you to go into it was a retail store right there. Actually, it's a prominent retail store. And it was Furniture Row Companies, and go in and be a warehouse guy. So I was like, well, a warehouse guy I've never been. Who's, I don't know much about being a warehouse person.
Yeah.
I mean, in ministry, there's a saying, how lazy you are. You just don't put a whole lot of time into pushing a broom or whatever. That's a joke, not
Right.
true, by the way. But, so I walked in and of course I got a job pretty quickly at this company, Furniture Row. And then I grew up in management there, became one of their assistant managers, which I moved from Joplin, Missouri. I went to Springfield, and I moved to Tulsa. That's actually how I originally got to Tulsa, was
Okay.
through furniture management. I did that for a number of years. And I thought, man, I don't think I can do this when I'm 50. I don't think I can move mattresses around, unload trucks, sell all day. I just didn't think I had the energy to do something like that. So I got to looking at other options. And there was a friend of mine, actually went to a church here locally in Tulsa. And I walked up to him, and he taught the young married class. And I said to him, I said, my brother, I said, do you know anybody that needs a good employee? And he said, yeah. He said, I do. And he introduced me to another person. His name was Jim Streets, actually. And Jim interviewed me for a job in logistics. Now, at that time, I didn't even know what logistics was. I'm like, logistics? What in the world is that? But of course, that's all things, let's say, warehousing, trucking, supply chain management. It's all kind of under this big umbrella. These days, we just call it supply chain management. A lot of different components to it. But I kind of started my career there, simply taking orders for people that were shipping. I started working with bigger companies like Tracker Boats. I don't know if you remember Tracker Boats or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're one of the big conglomerates that have boats for Bass Pro Shops. You see these guys that got the Bass Pro Shops hats on. I did logistics for them for a number of years, actually. Mitsubishi Electric. I worked with Mitsubishi Electric. I'd fly to Ohio, build relationships with a lot of these people in business over the years. And I didn't just do shipping components. I did other things for them. We implemented applications for shipping that would help them transit, purchase order information, reporting, all kinds of things we did for them, different types of business and presentations that would help them basically centralize their network information, and using systems to do it, computers to do it. So Mitsubishi, Leviton was another big company. They're right there in Long Island outside of New York. So I remember, just a great group of people, actually Jewish owned, just down to earth people. And they had, in those days, I was, I think, still in my early 30s. And I remember walking into some of these big boardrooms, just like, wow, look at this, is like on television. Holy cow, and meeting the CFOs, the CEOs of some of these major companies along the way, which was really great. So I did supply chain management for a number of years, and then kind of towards the end of my experience in logistics, supply chain management, I was doing a lot of account management. Certainly, I was doing project management. Project manager, you get in these roles where you're working with companies and they want to implement different types of systems or different types of applications or products or whatever. You automatically, just by default, become a project manager. You're managing your own people to get it done. You're managing the people at these businesses to make it happen. You're kind of going up the org chart, if you will, meeting people, building relationships, and making it happen. And so, I had done supply chain, I guess, for about 15 years, and account management, again, this project management. But one day I thought, you know what, man, these project managers I see on LinkedIn, man, they're making a ton of money. These guys are making lots of money. Construction project managers, application, IT people, software, people working in software development, project management, Scrum Master, if you've heard that term or not. I got involved in all of this stuff, and ultimately I found myself working at the Bank of Oklahoma, which was a great decision.
Okay.
Going from supply chain and manufacturing, and all of these, bigger corporations coming into banking. Banking is a very unique culture. I
Mhm.
think, my opinion, what I see, and again, Bank of Oklahoma may be unique. I'm not speaking, by the way, I'm not speaking on their behalf. I'll just say that, just, put that out there, right?
Get those good, just
Get
out the
that
way.
put
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
is good social media. I'll just put that out. That
Yes,
this in no way, reflects the
represents.
opinions,
Yes, yes.
of the bank. But the culture is caring. I think a really much more of a caring culture, very kind, very considerate, and they work to have great employees. And the projects I've done for the bank over these last couple of years that I've been there now, I have had some awesome teams, very sharp people, I've done a great job. I've also had some great executives to work with. I mean, if I need to get a contract signed or I need something that to take place pretty quickly and have maybe a line of business executive help push people along, man, they're so helpful and just so caring and wanting to do the right thing. So, you don't always get that in every business, every industry, every company. Again, this may be more specific to a company, but I have really enjoyed being there. So, just kind of climbing the ladder from your basic understanding of
Mhm.
warehousing, how to operate a business on the storefront, retail management, moving out into supply chain, which is your bigger world. Like I said, I work with Mitsubishi Electric, Leviton, a lot of these major conglomerate companies, and then coming in right now more into banking. It's been a great journey. I've learned a lot, and all of it, I just give glory to God for His
Mhm.
wisdom and just the journey. It's been an incredible journey, and it's also done real well for my family
Yeah.
at the same time. And in the process of all this too, it's not it has allowed me to continue to perform ministry duties, maybe not at a full-time level like a lot of
Mhm.
people are able to do them, but it's allowed me to do things and be helpful and effective for the people in ministry, different churches I've been at, to help them along the way in their journey spiritually too. So it's been, I think, a win-win for me, although I have to say I didn't necessarily start out thinking I'm going to do anything else but just full time ministry. And when I remember some of my professors used to tell me, if you can do anything else, do it. But this idea of bivocational was not, so much promoted because
Mhm.
I mean, you didn't really have faith, do you, Taylor? If you have to go get another job, I mean, come on, come on.
Man,
You're
man.
smarter than that. You got more faith than that. Don't go do that. But I've learned that God works the natural. I mean, if He didn't, why do we have to use money to buy things? We just,
Right.
people. It's. I'm going to go on a tangent now, but it's interesting how people think, even Christians. And I pastored a church for a number of years too, and all of this journey. I pastored a church for a number of years too, and it's interesting.
And let the people know you
Yeah,
were pastoring
yeah.
while still having the full-time job. Correct. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I got to a place in the supply chain job where I was doing onboarding and training. I'd been there for almost 15 years.
Okay.
So at that time, new people coming on board, coming on staff. I love to train people. I love to go over. I knew the customer base really well,
Mhm.
and so as we got new employees coming in the business, I could tell them about, number one, how they do their job. And then, also too, just different personalities and different customers that they would work with. And so I think that was really helpful. That was training, that was like talent development. That was
Mhm.
training. And, that was kind of a strict 8 to 5. It was more of a consulting type thing. They
Okay.
still paid me the same amount of money they paid me when I was doing all this project manager for various companies and all that. But it gave me the time to say, okay, you know what? I'm making the same money. I've got a little bit more time on my hands. And
Mhm.
then God just had opened up that door for me to walk in ministry. And it was, I think, for this season of my life, it was very beneficial. I pastored this church here outside of Tulsa for about 6 years, a little over 6 years, I
Okay.
guess.
Yeah, it's so true, Clint. For the people around me, for my wife, for my close friends who went to Bible college as well, I went to CBC, God rest its soul, Central
Yeah,
Bible College, you guys in Springfield,
yeah,
Missouri.
yeah.
Beautiful campus, though. Beautiful
They just
area. I
couldn't
still have
get
a.
out of the debt. They just let it
It's
go down too
the
far. Just too
financial
much
thing.
debt.
Yeah, it swallowed it.
Yeah.
It was always such a frustration, a honestly a confusing time for me coming out of college,
Mhm.
where our own motto, right, at ministry, anybody, just what our brother Clint was saying was literally, it's all about the call.
Yeah.
So the
Right.
call to ministry. So yes. And so
Yeah.
here we are, freshly married, like broke as a joke. Didn't have thousands of dollars saved up and knew right when I was going to get
Right.
married. I could have done a lot of things better. I could write 70 books on that.
Sure.
But it was such a difficult thing for me. I would say, Clint, even into early 30s, I'm 38 now,
Yeah.
that it took me a while to settle, Clint, within my own heart and my own soul,
Yeah.
the fragmented thinking, the division that there was between this secular and sacred model
Yeah.
mentality, thinking that if I'm not on a stage in
Right.
ministry, if I'm not holding a mic in my hand, if
Right.
I don't have a guitar strapped around me because I do music,
Yeah.
if I'm not doing ministry full time in some capacity, then I had people message me on Facebook, dear friends of mine who meant well, who were noticing that I wasn't in ministry and like, hey man, I wanted to know, are you okay? And kind of, I didn't like, yeah, I'm actually doing pretty great. How are you? And then we've kind of finally got to it. And I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
see what you're meaning. You see that I'm not in ministry. You are. So you want to know if I'm actually walking with Jesus but I get it. It
Yeah.
was so ingrained within us. So Clint, tell me and tell us, for those people who
Yeah.
have went to Bible college or feeling like they want to be in ministry, or they're in secular work models right now.
Yeah.
Clint, for so long, I carried a frustration. I carried
It's
almost a
hard.
weight of condemnation,
Yeah.
feeling like, am I in sin? This is dead. I'm literally questioning God.
Yeah.
Am I not in obedience to what
Right.
you're calling me to do? Because as you can say, I've got 5 kids. Bills are real. And ministry, we don't do it for the money if you're in it for the right
Yeah.
reason. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it's reality and those bills keep knocking. How did you handle that? Because I feel like I wish I could have had a healthy ear of wisdom I feel like I stayed in the desert of struggle for too long and I
Yeah.
didn't know how to get out of that. And it was messing up my performance at work. I brought that stress home with me. It
Yeah.
caused so much strife within the family and they saw it on me. I didn't know how to get out, Clint.
Wow. Yeah, the thing about it, what you have to realize, and it's not something that every minister, every person that's called of God doesn't wrestle with. I mean, the very fact that you're wrestling with says that there's something right about you.
Mhm.
It's right. Your
Wow.
wrestling was right. If you look at Jacob, here he is. He's wrestling with God. And God transforms his life. He goes from being Jacob to Israel. I mean, it's a transformation. So you're in the process of wrestling. That's a good place to be. God's dealing. You're working. You're thinking through this thing. Am I right or wrong? The truth of the matter is, you like I wasn't running from God. I had not done anything wrong. Probably early on, I could have used more wisdom, more coaching, more understanding. And if you look at the overall structure of the church and how it's put together, going in, Taylor, I did not know that, let's say in our fellowship at the time, the Assemblies of God, at that time, 70% of the churches, if I remember, were less than 100 people, and 50% were less than 50 people, something like that. So you're walking into this thinking that this is going to be some kind of a career, if you will. That's how you look at it. You shouldn't have. It's a calling,
Yeah.
and a calling is in season and it's out of season. Peter, even if you look at his life, he's at times walking by and healing the sick. I mean, his shadow is healing the sick.
Yeah.
And that was seasonal. Did that happen for the next 50 years? No, but it was seasonal that it happened. And God works in seasons like that. Number one, you've not done anything wrong. You weren't running from God. You're doing exactly what he wanted you to do. But just the structure you walk in, I wasn't cognizant of it.
Yeah.
I kept trying to climb to the next ladder. My focus, rather than just doing basic ministry, I'm trying to get a master's degree. I thought, well, that's not enough. I got credentials. And I thought, well, that's not enough. And then I've got to be ordained. I got ordained. I said, is there anything else I can do? The other people say, well, Clint, maybe you should get a PhD. And I'm like, a PhD? I can't afford the master's I've got, So we think in these terms of trying to climb this ladder that's put before us. And then if you do climb the ladder and you've got, 50 people there, precious people, right? They're important to God, or 100 or 300 or however
Mhm.
many you may go into ministry. But then you begin to realize, wow, just supporting yourself as an individual, let alone supporting a number of other people, it's just not put together correctly. The other thing too, when you become a pastor, and I didn't have to worry about personal finances when I was a pastor. So that was another thing of working and being involved in the corporate
Mhm.
world for a lot of years. I didn't have to worry about it. If somebody got upset and they invited me over for dinner, because in ministry, this is how it happens. Pastor, we love you so much. You're such a great preacher. You're such a good guy.
The
Uh,
setup.
how about, what? We'd love to have you come over for dinner. Now, this doesn't happen anymore. This is probably why a lot of pastors don't go for people to their houses for dinner. I would, honestly, and I still would if I was. I never minded it. I was always interested in what little trap they're trying to put me in. It's funny. It's very sad. But anyway, if they would say, hey, we want you to do more of X, Y, and Z, or we're not going to pay our tithes, I'd say, okay. I said, I know you came from this other church
Wow.
before. Did you tell that pastor there? Did you tell him the same thing you told me? Of course, it was a mega church they went to before, whatever. And of course they didn't, voice their opinion, whatever. And so I always felt, in some ways, when you go to a small fellowship, you're kind of treated unfairly. And people come by at times your church just to try to, control it. They
Mhm.
bring their agendas. You've seen some of these stories. And
Mhm.
in our seat as a leader or as a pastor, you can't tell everybody these stories at the time. I'm not going to, but it's true. People would do that. So, hey, if Taylor, when he comes, doesn't sing Amazing Grace, and by the way, I love when you sing Amazing Grace or whatever. You do such a great job. I always love when you come to the church and sing and play. But hey, you know what? You can go find another place to worship at. That's okay. I love you. You love me. If you stop paying your tithes, you know what? That's probably only going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt me. You're not,
Right.
this is not, I'm not in this thing for the money. It's a calling, not a
Yeah.
career. I'm called. That's what it is. That's just the facts of life. So I really wasn't bothered for that. So kind of coming from the corporate world, it put me in that position that I didn't have to worry about that. I made my own way as far as it's like Paul building tents.
Yes.
If the
Yes.
Corinthians got mad and they said, well, we're tired of you preaching that message of the cross, we're going to go on down the road here, Paul. And Paul's like, hey, for the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, but to we who are saved, it's the power of God.
Wisdom.
And so we don't
Yes.
like that,
Yes.
Paul. He's like, well, you can go on down, and there's plenty of Jezebel churches down there. There's plenty of Judaizers trying to bewitch people down there. You can go on down that way if you want to. So it kind of did give me that power to say, you know what? I'm not really so much worried about that. And I do think that is definitely a bonus. There's some negatives here in that you can't spend as much time with people as you'd like to. I would love to spend more time with people. And that's always the downside. But from that standpoint, it's a no-brainer. In fact, I remember years ago, I thought, Lord, maybe we should set up some assembly lines here and make Bible covers or something where we're actually producing something and getting revenue in, as opposed to just depending upon people giving us charity or not giving us charity. Because Taylor, as you know, a lot of these preachers, not all of them, but a lot of them are preaching because they've got to have X amount of dollars. I know, I lived it. I mean, just to pay the electric bills where I was at. You remember the church where I was at? That thing was 28,000 square feet. All right. Just to pay the electric bills, it was like $3,500 a month. And then people would leave the lights on. And then, gas leaks would happen. These are all things that people don't normally think about, that you've got to take care of and you've got to pay for that. So, you feel like, hey, you know what? You can kind of compromise a little bit, but the Lord is not calling us to compromise. But we're tempted to do that. And sometimes being put in that situation where you're just taking charity from people, because that's kind of what it is, that's kind of where you find. And so you find in that a lot of preachers that are not concerned with being obedient to the truth or being obedient to the faith, but rather they're obedient to social justice. They're obedient to some kind of culture thing going on and not focused on the preaching of the gospel, as you well know. So I think you being in the situation, certainly me being, I will tell you that I think overall it's a positive, but I think even more I think it would be good for us even more to excel in our businesses and what we're working to
Mhm.
do, which would free up more time for us to spend more time in ministry and doing that because we could be effective.
Yes.
And the key
Yes.
thing is, this idea of people, because they come around, and unfortunately, it's far too often where people are trying to manipulate you as the minister. I had people would come to my church, they try to proselytize me to their favorite prophet, to their favorite this individual, instead of really getting in alignment with the gospel message and getting empowered with the Holy Spirit and going out doing the work of God.
Mhm.
And so this idea of manipulation, which is in the church today, of course it's in the world as well, but having financial freedom, if you will, where I'm not worried about if they give or they don't. Now I'm certainly worried about if they're going to help out our missionaries that are coming. When we had guest speakers, I wanted to try to take care of them. I had a certain minimum I wanted to pay them, and then we try to pay
Mhm.
them with offerings that people would give too, from that standpoint. But this journey of business has allowed me to not worry about that. If you say, "Hey, join my podcast," or come preach for me, you don't got to pay me. If you want to, you feel like that's what God wants you to do, you can. And of course, church people get upset about that too. Well, we got to sow into the man of God. Well, you need to, but I'm not bound by that, and I won't be manipulated by it. So,
Yes.
and that's how people roll, man.
Yeah, it's we are seeing, Clint, right now a lot of things happening. I think we know is sad. It happens out there,
Yeah.
but again, it's happening in churches. Things People are going to be people, whether you're in a church or whether you're
Yeah.
at the gas station or whether you're in
Oh,
Walmart.
absolutely.
We are all human, right? We're going to be
Absolutely.
subject to error, to all of these things. I do believe and think that with that being a fact, a truth of life, the standard is the standard is the standard that the word of God holds us all to.
Yeah.
That he who believes in him, as First John said, should also walk as he walks.
Right.
There should be fruit, I think, right, that God is looking for in the life of a believer, or
Right.
the person who professes that they believe.
Yeah.
But much more, it even declares a higher standard for those of anyone that longs to be in a leadership position. Clint, where do you think, if truth serum were just to be shot into your left arm right now, where do you see the state of the American church right now? You're seeing a lot of mega pastors, or just pastors, almost even
Right.
in general, falling away. There's a lot of things that are being found out. I feel like there's a lawsuit, sadly, every week that's coming across my social media feeds
Yeah.
with all of these prominent, well-known,
Prominent. Yeah.
and lifted up organizations and churches. And not that it's not happening in places in the East, but speaking of America, we live here.
Yeah.
Clint, how did we get here? Or has this been something, again, that's just been bubbling underneath the surface? And do you think that we're in a time that God is saying, hey, I've been gracious, but enough's enough for the sake of the people that we're shepherding and the people that we're leading? Where are we at right now?
Yeah. That's something, and I'll say that, really in my mind, and probably the mind of a lot of ministers, that has been going on for a lot of years now. I'm talking about, I know in my time, I've been doing this for about 25 years, going back even 25 years when I was at college, we were talking about the state of that time, the state of the modern church. It wasn't concerned about doctrine, wasn't concerned about truth, wasn't concerned about prayer, really wasn't concerned about doing the work of the ministry. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of reasons. The church has been so psychologized, to be honest with you, and how we preach and how we promote things and how we do all that we do. And it's not as convicting and straight to the point as you see in the book of Acts. As you can see Peter on the day of Pentecost, whenever he gets up there and just preaches a solid word, and people are being convicted to the heart, because of the miracles, the signs that are happening all around them. I think about the man at the gate called Beautiful. We sat there for all of these years, and then one day, as Peter and John were walking into the temple to pray, he says, "Gold and silver I do not have, but such as I have, give I unto thee." It was of little means, if you will, but they focused on the right things. They focused on their belief system. what they knew to be true and right, and they passed it on to their families. And I think because of this kind of manipulation, if you will, and when you become a leader in the church, you become a pastor and these other things, you begin to see a lot of that. I recognized a lot of things. I would have meetings with other ministry leaders, and I'm, of course, over the years, I met a lot of pastors. You've met a lot of pastors as well, and I thought, I would bring up some of these issues in church about, even just crazy things going on in church, right?
Yeah.
Like prophets coming in and saying something like, hey, I had coffee this morning with Jesus in heaven, and I just came down to tell everybody, that don't use decaf. Something's just crazy. I'm kind of being facetious, but that's a half truth. Yeah.
You're pretty close. No, I think.
Okay. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And other things like that I would talk about with other ministry leaders and say, listen, we've got to focus on truth and doctrine and allow the Holy Spirit to move. If Paul says in Galatians, he asked him, he says, you began with the Spirit. Okay, they came to Christ in Galatians. They began the right way. They preached the right message. They were obedient to the right belief system. And he says, you began with the Spirit. You've kind of veered off here in the flesh. He says, how and why is it that God, he says, is supplying the Spirit to you? This is Galatians 3:5. How is it that God is supplying the Spirit to you and working miracles among you? Is it because of all the great things you're doing? Or because you're obedient to the truth? You have the right belief system. You're walking in the right message. You're preaching the right message. You're committed to the right message. You're non-compromising the right message. And if the supply of the Spirit in our life for regeneration and for ongoing sanctification, transformation, whatever you call it, depends upon us being obedient to truth, then by God, that's our responsibility in this place, is to bring, what he say in Ephesians chapter 4, the apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of ministry, till we all come into the unity of the faith.
Yes.
The faith is the foundational gospel. It's the foundational belief system of what we all believe about Christ, who he is and what Christ has done. So if it's that important to them, obviously you could take a look and see how the church has got off, because in many cases, leaders have been manipulated. People come in with their own agendas. People on boards will manipulate the situation. And, before you know it, you go to church and they're not even talking about Christ. They're not talking about things that spiritually matter. And at the end of the day, you had some coffee, you met some nice people, you shake a few hands, you give some money, and that's it. And you come back and you do it all over again. And there's no spiritual mix really happening in the lives of those people. And listen, as you know, because I'm a human and you're a human, there has to be a dynamic of the moving of the Holy Spirit in the life of that person, or you're in big time trouble. And the longer, this is an old saying, I don't know if you've heard this or not. It's kind of funny. It's somewhat humorous. But you can't take a Taylor Morgan and put him under a dead preacher, because you can't take a live chicken and put him under a dead hen. Have you ever heard that? You can't take a live chicken and put him under a dead hen. And so that's the case. So, there's a lot to be said, but I think at the end of the day, they've not made the main thing the preaching of Jesus Christ, who he is and what he did. And they've not preached, we could go back years on this one. They've not preached the empowering, effective work of the Holy Spirit in the lives of men and women. It's just not happening. Some places in the world it probably is. But I don't see it, in the States. But again, I'm not everywhere, and I'm sure there are some groups that are doing very well at doing it, but that's my perception. Listen, it can happen to anybody. And I'm using Galatians as an example because I think it's a great example to us. In chapter 5 of Galatians, the Apostle Paul asked the question. He said, you're running so well. Yeah. He says, who did hinder you? Who got you off track? And then in chapter 3, verse 1, he uses that strong statement where he says, wait a minute. I preached the right message, Christ and him crucified. He asked the question, who has bewitched you?
Bewitched, yes.
That's a big word. That's cast a spell. That's manipulated. That's deceived. so much in that word right there. And it's the same thing that can happen to us today. That's why it's our individual responsibility as Christians to pick up the Bible and read it and understand it. Honestly, it's one of those things that we're personally responsible to do and not try to depend upon a leader, pastor. We want to, they're a great benefit to our lives, but they're not at your house every day.
Right.
They're not like, hey, they don't come over to your house and charge you a consulting fee to, teach your kids Bible stories. They just don't do that. It's the nature of it. But, it's like this, 2 Corinthians is another, Paul uses a term like subtle. He said the enemy came in, he was subtle, he's crafty. In chapter 11, when he talks about, deception, people going the wrong way. So they not focused on being obedient to the truth. They were working in other areas, whatever areas those may have been. It just ultimately didn't matter. Got them off track. That's important because the right faith, we receive the supply, the help, and the working of the Spirit. And without the working of the Spirit in our lives, we're in big time trouble. We are human. We are in the world. We deal with the flesh, and we have the devil that's working as overtime on us. So we have to, we have to be in a place where God is ministering to us. But that's kind of my thoughts on it. There's a lot that could be said around that. And, what's some of your thoughts that you feel?
Yeah, no, I was literally just, this thought was bubbling up in my head as you were speaking, that I think one of the biggest places where we have lost is before it ever got to the church building. We're losing in our homes.
Yeah.
I don't think that. I think another message along with the cross and with the gifts, the power of the Holy Spirit, and not just preaching it, but preaching it and then allowing it to properly, in order, still be manifested within the church. Because a lot of preachers will preach, we believe in these things, and it'll be on a website, and it's cool and it's flashy.
Yeah.
But it's never going to be operable within the church. And I'm just
or talk.
People know how I talk on this space. I think we need to get a backbone again. If you take it off the website, then
take it down.
That's just because, in all honesty, you're bringing confusion to the people.
Right.
Because if it's really about the new people, we say that we're bringing in and converting and wanting to disciple.
Right.
We have a cool and flashy website. We have what we say that we believe. They're thinking, then what is the Holy Spirit? The goosebump during the second slow song that made me feel good. But if there's not a manifestation, if we don't have, I would say, fathers or teachers, mothers in the faith who are being able to share with them, to live that out on Sundays, but also Monday through Saturdays in their homes, when they're walking around and we're praying in the Spirit anymore. Another message, again, I was saying all that to say that I feel is lost, is the message of the secret place. Is where are those, Clint, who long and hunger to talk about God, even though it's not a Sunday? Because I just feel, and if we're not careful, again, this is not in a condemning way. I have 5 kids. We're doing 1,000 things. Our kids are homeschooled now. I understand busy. You understand busy. But I think we've got to destroy the wall that says, this is holy, all my other stuff is secular. No, to the born-again, regenerated believer, everything we do can be unto the glory and honor. It's all worship. And I think if we recapture that mentality, Clint, then everything we do can have his grace and his Spirit and his presence. I just got done wrapping up a conversation that I'm going to be editing as well, that I've done this week, of a good friend of mine. That same little bit kind of story, had ministry and secular stuff, and he was doing a job that he didn't know he was going to be doing, selling cars. And then all of a sudden, God is using this moment as they're going out doing test drives. He's ministering to people, and they're having encounters with the Lord while they're test driving a vehicle. And I'm thinking, that's the attitude we need to reclaim and take back. And I feel that would have helped me when I was telling you that I struggled, feeling that the most powerful, authentic me can only be in a ministry setting. And if we get back that, if we're really walking with the Lord,
see, it's true, right,
on a daily basis,
what you said. I mean,
I think his evidence will show up wherever we're at.
Yeah, at its core, and like you just said, with your calling, and the same thing with me, ultimately, the only place that you feel your authentic person and self to talk about what you really believe is the right thing for everyone is being in that context. But you're building a foundation to get there and be able to do more of that in your life. It's kind of funny. I was thinking when you said that about your friend that has the car, sells the cars. I thought that guy or whoever probably had more of an experience of God in that car lot than most people do in the sanctuary somewhere. Which again is another tragedy, but it's just kind of the way that it is. Leaders, I think generally leaders many times in churches will force that. They don't like the out of control. They don't like too much spirituality. We got to file them in here. We got to file them out. And that's a tragedy. That's a tragedy. We call that religion, and I understand that. I understand you got to be sensitive with people's time and what's happening. But, the way that people come in this thing is through experience. When you come in the kingdom of God and you're born again, it's an experience. Every single person has to have that experience of being born again, coming into the kingdom from darkness into light. And it's an experience that you have. So experience can't be discounted. It's got to be based on truth, but experience can't be discounted. It is vital to the
Yes.
to the experience and relationship the child of God has to God. And the church should be a conduit to facilitate these truthful experiences with God. And that's what it is. Whether I've got 5 or 5,000, I can't be manipulated in that. I just can't be we can't be manipulated there. And to run these organizations and these marketing schemes, that's what you have to do. And that's just not right. But I thought it's kind of funny when you said that. I said, I bet that person that had experience with the car sales guy that probably had more of a church experience than most people have in churches today, to be honest.
No, and he had actually talked about that. He said he found in some ways he was able to have almost even more deeper personal encounters with people outside of the context of the church. And I think in some ways that is real again, that God is, he fills heaven and earth, right?
Yeah.
Like where is he not?
100%.
David said, if I make my bed in hell, like behold, you're there. If wherever I go, I can't escape you. But I do feel at the same time, there's something we need to be intentional with when it comes talking about building the house of the Lord, that we are building according to his blueprints and not according to the blueprints of the culture, where we're trying to win the popularity war.
Wow.
And whatever we can do to get as many likes and retweets. And to have all this fame, but have we sold our soul in essence? And I think though, and we talked about this earlier, we just coming out of this political season and in some ways just entering it, things are good. I still think going to get a little bit rough even through January.
So. Yeah.
But I think even we talked about, I think even if the church hasn't awakened yet, the culture, I think people, Christian or not, are saying, okay, have we all had enough of the delusion?
The culture.
Have we all had enough of the bowing the knee to the victim mentality culture that's making us twist even scientific facts, wanting to call it truth? And if you or anybody says anything against it, you're a heretic. Matter of fact, you hate people.
Right.
All the labels that are just being thrown out there.
So much.
And I think that this was not just a win. And yes, I will say this to anyone who's listening, even if you don't believe that right now, this wasn't just a win for America, but I really believe this was a win for humanity. And on either side that you find yourself on,
100%,
you being able to have a voice, to have the courage to voice your opinion. I believe that freedom of speech, at least for now, was won. But I think the culture and people are waking up to you know what? I'm no longer going to be silent. I'm no longer going to be canceled. I don't care whatever the repercussions, the consequences may be. And I'm just hoping the ramifications that I wish that the church in essence would have maybe led that. But hey,
they didn't lead it.
We whatever, we tag along and get our confidence back. Clint, get our spine back, get our voice back, doing things like this. I'm hoping to see a good domino effect begin to happen with people being able to finally stand up and say, you know what? No, I disagree.
Yeah, no, I absolutely right.
Because it's hard to disagree anymore.
Well,
Clint?
it
I
is hard
mean,
to disagree, and it's interesting how the culture has kind of shifted to say, you know what, this way of thinking and putting people in group. This is
yes,
the white group. This is the black group. This
right.
is the Hispanic group. This is this group. And to be honest with you, so many of us already intermingled as well. I mean, it's just silly to be honest with you. We're human beings. We are unique in the way that God made us. Even God, when He created the universe, He still said, David said, "What is man that thou art mindful of him?"
Mm-hmm.
And just talks about the wonder of His creation. Crowned him with glory, gave him dignity and honor, and all these things, not based on race, but based on His humanity, and that He was a reflection of the Godhead. It's a beautiful thing. But the church unfortunately, did not lead that charge. Culture is now saying we've had way too much of this. It's exhaustive, by the way. We can't keep up with it. It keeps changing. We keep getting more letters added to the alphabet. We're not even sure how many we've got now. And something's got to stop at some point. And also, in many cases, it's bringing people into poverty. And there's a lot of different reasons for all these things. What I'm saying is there's no reason to be afraid. But if
Yeah.
anybody led any fight, I'll say this about politics. I know politics are important because politics impact policy and policy impacts people. And
Yes.
if I'm a leader
Yes.
and I'm a church leader and I recognize that this impacts people in my church or my community, those things are important to me. And they should be important to every man in his family and the church and so on. Those are things that should be. So, yeah, of all things, Taylor, I think is this freedom of speech that was really, God raising someone like Elon Musk up with his knowledge base to say, hey, wow, we can't be canceled. We've got to have
Yes.
freedom of speech. Freedom of speech makes us unique as Americans in what we have. And why wouldn't all preachers support that, by the way? Why wouldn't they cry it from the pulpit? Because think of all the nations that don't have freedom of speech right now.
Mm-hmm.
What can they do? The same missionaries that we supported 30 years ago, did they go get liberated, get wealthy, and support their own ministries? Or are we still giving them money? Right? No, the money for these organizations, foreign and abroad, is still coming from the United States of America.
Right.
If anybody needs to keep their freedom of speech, we do. And we should push for them to have it. But that's a platform you should be able to stand on. But again, I think that it's another situation of the Sarah, whatever will be, shall be. And we just throw our hands up in the air and we're not concerned about it. But what you're saying is spot on. I'm with you.
Yeah, I think it's the first time for me, Clint, that I got a little bit more fully active and vocal in political season. I attended to, I think, to a detriment.
You lost some friends?
Yeah, I just saw that. Man, I got to be careful when I move this. That button is right there. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But I think to a detriment, I was inactive. I think I stayed on the bench too long, not just when it came to politics, but I think you're right, because if you follow the trail of impact,
Mm-hmm.
at the end, if this is of the people, by the people, for the, it's about the people.
Yeah.
So these things do matter, and I think on my side and many people's side, I think in the Christian community side, and for those of you guys who are Christians, hey, don't turn us off here. Listen to me, this may hurt, but I think it's a mixture of ignorance and arrogance to say that it doesn't matter, Clint. I don't know if you've heard this, but it still rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
There's this idea that says if you voted at all for politics, if you ever talk about politics, if you ever lift up the name of America, or even almost saying God bless America anymore, it's now immediately labeled as nationalism.
Right. Yeah.
As if I'm making America this idol. Now, there are some that I know mixture and can take it too far.
Right.
But
Sure.
I've always said to these people, I don't feel that I have to hate my country to love God.
Yeah.
Me loving my country and understanding,
Right.
guys, that we sit in a place of blessing and favor that Clint just said that many other countries do not have right now.
They don't have it.
And we take it for granted. So, Clint, I think it's arrogant, and I think it's ignorant to say that it's nationalism and God, Jesus wouldn't get mixed up in politics and He wouldn't care. It's not about that. It's about the people. It's about being thankful and having gratitude that, no, I am thankful I live in America, and I am going to vote, and I am going to talk about it.
That's
because
right.
those things are going to affect if we let it go for a while and
Right.
we don't get in the game for too long. You're going to see those effects knock at our door. And I think I think the people rose up anyway. But it's just been getting on my nerves, and I had to
Yeah.
put it out there that if I say I love America and I love this country, you guys,
Yeah.
no, it's not nationalism.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
I believe God, and I will pray God bless America,
Yeah.
and I will unapologetically begin to say that and pray that.
Yeah. Well,
It's crazy.
Paul, think about it. Paul used the Roman Empire whenever he was preaching the gospel. He claimed his Roman citizenship. He didn't hide it. He was proud of his Roman citizenship, and whatever way he was able to achieve, or his family was able to obtain Roman citizenship some decades or years before, however that came about, Paul was proud of it. And he would talk about his Roman citizenship even among leaders. Giving him the right to go forward and to preach to different people within the Roman Empire. And of course, at the end of his life, he's waiting in Acts 28, waiting to meet, I believe, with the Caesar. So God used that empire to spread the gospel with the roads, with the power of citizenship. And America has given us a great power of some citizenship in the freedom of speech. It's given us a good economy, up and down sometimes, but a good economy to preach the gospel into the other parts of the world. And we should always be careful, like you mentioned, to be humble about it. I remember what Paul said to the church at Rome, where he says, hey, you're saying this, that, or the other about the Jews. And he says, you should fear and not be high-minded, lest you also, like they, get taken out, if you will. That you fall from your own steadfastness, that you come into a place of unbelief in your life. So we deal with this with a great place of humility and realizing that what we do matters. It's important. And again, you've got a whole nother segment of the church that just believes that it's all determined. Everything Taylor did was already determined. Jesus only died for a few people. That's a whole nother topic for another day. And they don't care about they don't care about this. It's just not a big deal.
Right. It's already all written. It's all predetermined. What are our actions matter? I'm just waiting for Jesus to come back and take us home. So essentially there's this screw anything, honestly, that happens out there. I'm just going to bury my head in the sand and just stay in the closet. And I think that's an aspect of the so-called this Christian realm that we need to recognize isn't working. And I don't really think it's ever worked. We're meant to be light. We're meant to be salt. And these things are supposed to be seen and tasted and heard and out into the world. Absolutely. I wanted to hit on this, Clint. You bring such a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge in so many of these areas. I love having people on this platform that have been in and out of places like ministry and business aspect minded things. You're a husband, you're a father, wearing all these hats, right? I think it's something that's always talked about on how can I improve in any of those areas. We talked about something earlier, and you had these 5 little points, and man, I just thought it was gold. I thought they were absolute, like I was still like, I'm gonna keep this. I may blow it up and make a picture behind me or something. You guys may be seeing it back here at some point. I just thought it was fantastic. Throughout your professional journey, as well as ministry, again, at the end of the day, you're leading people. No matter what the context is, the details may change. But talk to us about those things. When I've asked you, what are the biggest lessons you've learned, and you came up with 5 key things that I really think would be good for our audience and the people who listen, for me as well, to help us grow in.
I just kind of just sat down and just thought, what those things might be as far as what's been effective. What do I see? Especially in the business world, if you've spent a lot of time traveling, meeting different executives or different companies, whatever the case, I think back on my experience and how I've been successful in a lot of those areas. And the first one is I had a guy years ago. He was the owner. At one time, it was a company called Fritz Company, and Fritz Companies actually sold their business to they're a freight forwarding company, and freight forwarding is like customs clearance, just so you know what I'm talking about. So things coming over the border got to get cleared.
Okay.
And he came up with in-transit customs clearance, and made a name for himself. But he had a huge organization this father built up, and he was a sales guy. But something he said, he sold his business to UPS, which became UPS Supply Chain Solutions today. Okay, so it's like 120 offices around the world. It's just great. I love something he said, and I had the privilege of working for him in his organization for over 15 years. But he used to always say this to us. He says, listen, at the end of the day, people do business with people. And I added in a segment of that because of my just being with people and being in business, knowing what people want. I'll say it this way. People do business with truthful people. Number one, people want honesty. They want to know, tell me about the data from my company. If you're a consultant, what's really going on with this situation? They want you to be honest with them. And, I think I've got a proverb I wrote down kind of along with that.
Yeah.
Proverbs 11:1. The Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him. And God is weighing the individual, and seeing if we're honest and truthful. And I will tell you that honesty is always the best policy. You say, well, I'm going to get fired. No, don't worry about that. Just tell them like it is. That's what they want to hear. You'll become a longtime friend. I will tell you to leaders, especially executive leaders, if you're just completely honest. The second thing is I've learned, you probably heard this one, ask questions. Nobody knows everything. You think, well, this person knows it or that. No, whatever context you're in, business, church ministries, whatever, it's okay to say, you know what, I don't know.
And that's hard to do, right? Especially if you're new to a place, we're wanting to impress, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to ask because that immediately implies and is saying, I don't have all the answers, but we want to pretend like we have all the answers, right?
Yeah. And it allows people to see the humility to say, I don't know everything. And you know what, by the way, you don't know everything either.
You can
look at this too, but I'm just telling you, you don't know everything either. But ask questions, I think is very good. Just always remember, no one knows everything. It's okay to ask. You hear it right, ask them again. That'll help you. The third thing is number 3 is always continue to develop skills in what you're doing. For me, in my world, I'm in project management. So different certifications I've got. So I'm a certified Scrum Master. Okay. And I'm also a certified project.
That just sounds awesome, by the way. Certified Scrum Master. That sounds like Taekwondo or karate, like 7th degree black belt or something. I don't know.
Well, you know where it comes from. It's a term they get from rugby. So in rugby, they have a scrum. And in the scrum, the teammates come together and they put their arm against the other person and they go down the field. So they're doing
That's
it
what
collectively.
That is. Nothing about okay.
Yeah, I'm not exact. We're football people here, But the English would know you say scrum. That's what you're talking about. So, Scrum Master is a collaborative leader that helps people in agile practices. So agile is a methodology in project management. You've got agile methodology, which I love agile methodology. You've also got another one called the waterfall methodology. Agile is more flexible. So, I'm doing a lot of software development. So in software development, we kind of gather up all of the work that needs to be developed or code writing, if you will, software being rewritten, if you will, over whatever period of time. And then we do all of the testing within this time frame. It's usually 2 weeks, a month maybe. Get everything tested, and then we release it as we go. Got this piece of work done, I'm going to put that in production, right? So you see a lot of companies like Amazon, Microsoft, they're doing software updates like every day. I mean, these are huge updates. Agile's more flexible that way. And you're actually incrementally releasing new code, updated code, upgraded software into production incrementally. Whereas the waterfall project management approach, it's kind of a one and done. I get everything written. I get it all put together. I get all 21 applications completed, and then I release it at one time into my production environment so that Taylor can use it. Well, that's dangerous. It's like we call it waterfall. Whoa, there it goes. It's kind of a one and done. But these are different things that you learn in your journey along the way. So I became a Scrum Master at a point in time some years back. And then also I got the Project Management Professional Certification, which is one of the top 5 professional certifications that you can get today outside of just like general college or something. So it's a real, if you get a PMP, you want to keep it because you're making very good money, and you can bank that wherever you're going, you're going to make real good money. So with that said, I'm just saying that's my world. So it could be Microsoft tools for maybe you're working on something with Power BI. Maybe it's Teams, whatever. I just put here, continue developing skills. Number 4, always be learning. I think one of the benefits I've had that also was helped me as I got along in ministry was I always loved to learn. I just love to learn more stuff, read different things. I just got a book by Bill O'Reilly called Confronting the Presidents. I've not read it yet, but I'm interested to learn about presidential history, what happened in the past, and so on. So always be learning whatever you're doing. Proverbs 15:22 states, plans fail for lack of counsel. I probably could say that in some of my life. All of us could. But with many
yes, I'll raise my hands.
advisors, they succeed. 4. So cultivate relationships, ask questions, continue developing skills, always be learning. And number 5, and again, there's 1,000 others, but these are kind of my top 5. Number 5, be resilient. Keep going. Don't give up. Be resilient. Adapt and thrive through challenges. Maybe you think you're going through pain, but you really are learning more through that pain than you recognize. I've had vice presidents over me before for a number of years, and I thought, man, these guys are tough as nails, hard. But I learned to work under pressure. I got smarter. I learned more. It gives you certain disciplines. I won't go into a meeting unless I'm prepared for that meeting. I'm just going to get prepared. Whatever I got to do. If I got to stay up all night, if I've got to study all day, whatever that means, I'm going to be ready to go. So resilience was the key in that. I didn't give up. It looked like that, man, the management style was terrible. Maybe the culture you work in is toxic, but keep going. Be resilient. Don't give up. The Lord is with you. Proverbs 12:24, diligent hands will rule, but laziness ends in forced labor. When I was a kid, my father used to come. He'd get me up for school in the morning. He used to come to my room. He'd say, people die in bed, Clint. When are you going to get up out of that bed? He's like, get up out of there. Let's go. It's time to go. Oh. And he always would quote that verse to me, about laziness. And then there's another one, if you remember this one in Proverbs, about the sluggard and how the sluggard finds his way into poverty quickly. And my dad would always say, you know what the Bible says about the sluggard? You better get up and get going. My father was like that. He did it in a funny way, but he was serious at the same time. So, it's a real deal. But be resilient. Get back up. Keep going. Keep pushing forward. God is for you. He's with you. Just keep going. So those are my 5. Cultivate relationships. Ask questions. Continue developing skills. Always be learning. And number 5, be resilient. If you do the first 4, that's great. But I think 5 is key there too. You got to keep pushing forward.
Keep going. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. No, I think it's very wise to, when someone that is made in your position where you're at in life, it's not by accident, right? Like although like you said, there may have been some things in our past we fell in. I think we learn in our failures. That's why number 5 on that's so important. Many times the keeping going is because, man, yesterday made me want to quit because of maybe my own doing. I messed up so much. I failed in so many years. And Clint, I myself am on this journey, and I won't re-talk about it too much because the previous episode is coming out, and I've already had this conversation with it, so I don't want to double back. But in a quick essence, I had a wake up call this January. Just looking back at my life, I'm going to be 40 in 2 years. Next year I'll be 39, and so it's just. I'm thinking my dad was right. And every other older person before me, when I was a young little whippersnapper, years old, and they look at me and they said, boy, you better, I'm country, y'all. So I got this country accent, I grew up in the sticks. So they're like, boy, I bet, I'm telling you, life's going to flash before your eyes before you know it. And here I am. It was my 20th year of high school. And I'm just like, wow. And I can look back, Clint, and, it's one of the main reasons I felt like the Lord birthed this thing, the place, this space, this whatever through me, which is why, ministry always in my heart, because it's the love of 2 things, the love of Jesus And then the thing that should naturally fall after that, the love of people,
Yeah.
loving the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving our neighbor as we love ourselves.
Yeah.
It's come in a different form for me than I thought, but so thankful that I want this thing. This is being birthed, I would say, out of a place that I know what it feels like to have felt like you have absolutely let down the entire world, Clint. I know what it feels like for failure to constantly stare you at the face every time you look in the mirror. For those of you who are listening or going to be listening to this, I know what it feels like for failure to constantly whisper in your ear at night to the point that you can't get any sleep, that you feel like you've forfeited your future, that you feel like you've blown it, you've screwed it up, you've let everybody down that's ever sowed a seed of faith or of work or of effort in ministry or given money to you because they believed in you and you let this person down. That weight and that shame and that guilt and that condemnation, what can start as a good thing in conviction, if not properly brought to a place of healing, Clint, I have found will kill you.
Yeah.
And it'll kill people. It's the silent killer that for someone who is called in ministry at a young age and made the plethora of mistakes that I've made. Yet even in the midst of that, I look up and I realize I have 5 beautiful kids.
Yeah.
A wife who God told me my sophomore year, my wife was coming.
Yeah.
We haven't even met her yet.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this is the devil, this is the enemy, but it's the Holy Spirit the entire time saying, I know right now you feel like you're this big.
Yeah.
Clint, how is it like God to in our lowest moments? And we're going to preach a little bit right here because I just felt a shift for someone who's listening to end this thing off in a segment to just encourage somebody who feels like giving up, who feels like you've forfeited your future. What Clint was talking about, number 5, guys, if you can't do any of the number 4, if you can just get number 5 down, if you can not literally quit, Clint, I'm telling you, there were times I wanted to check out on life. And I've said this to friends. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
That I knew the weight of what I thought I had forfeited. But yet his grace was sufficient even in the lowest of my times. Paul said, I'm the chief of sinners.
That's right. Yeah.
If I was the guy they said who was murdering us is now preaching the gospel he once tried to destroy.
Yeah.
And so I feel myself that I'm on this to find up and round up everybody who feels like who was given into the lie that I gave into.
Yeah.
That you forfeited the dream, that you can't have what God. He knew I was going to mess up, Clint. He knew I was going to fall when he called me.
Right.
All the things. And again, this is not a license for sin for anybody. So we continue to sin that grace may abound.
Yeah.
But obviously, no. What this is a shout out to hope, to redemption, to people who know the Lord or don't know the Lord and don't know that there is a hope. Clint, what would you say to somebody? Because I just felt like someone needed to hear this in this moment, to somebody where maybe even if you have a time of a vulnerable moment, Clint, where you felt like giving up or you were at a fork in the road and you didn't know if the promises or whatever you feel like was in your heart was going to come to pass. Share with somebody out there who may be listening on with what you went through, maybe if there's anything you went through, and maybe some spiritual and also some practical tips on here's what I did to keep going, to keep pressing, keep believing.
Yeah. Well, for me, and for those listening as well, number one, put your faith in Christ. It seems simple, but it is transformative. And just having God and Christ come in your life and make that change, it makes all of the difference in the world. Number one. So when I walk through issues where things didn't work out for me in church ministries, to be full time, because in my mind, that's how life should be. I should be full time, and I should retire from that, and that's just how things should always work out. Or other issues in my life that I had walked through, challenges, jobs, different things. I always had Christ there at the foundation. He's always with me. That's, the key thing is in all of this is that, being a believer is not, a walk in the park, but it's a relationship. And like your relationship with your friends or your spouse or whoever, you go through hills and valleys. It's up and down at times, but consistently he's there. And with me in my life and coming to faith at a young age, I had that foundation that said, hey, he's for you. He's with you. keep pushing on. And even in some of the times there are times, I mean, you go through in season, you can't even really pray because you felt like, you know what, I lost this game. I lost this game.
Yeah.
This last church that I ministered at, incidentally, we ended up selling the church for a lot of different reasons. And ultimately, it was a huge win. It's actually now the largest church in that region today to the group of people we sold it to. But however, even though there was positive in this transition to another congregation and all that, it is very demeaning to in your mind, you feel like you've lost the game. You know, you feel like you didn't achieve it. You didn't live up to the standard. And yet I had not done anything wrong. I had not done anything wrong financially for the church. I had not done anything wrong morally against the church. Those things just happened. And even if you had issues or you sinned or you failed, you know, it's not over. And that's what I love about God is he'll take someone like Moses who's on the backside of the desert. He'll take someone like Jonah who's in the belly of the whale. He'll take someone like David who is the little ruddy redheaded boy, blue-eyed boy, who is the baby of the family, and he'll take them from the lowest of the low, and he'll put them from the pasture, and he'll put them in the palace. You know what I'm saying? And that's who God is. So be encouraged. I love what Joshua said, especially if you're going down a path maybe you've never traveled down before, where, you know, Joshua basically said, you know, I've never gone this way before. The Lord wanted him to go a certain way. He said, I've never gone this way before. But God reminded him, he said, take heart, take courage, for the Lord thy God is with you wherever you go. So no matter what situation you find yourself in, there's always hope. There's always a path forward. And even if you've lost someone, this is a difficult season for a lot of people right now. We're coming into the Christmas season. A lot of people have lost loved ones. This time, 20 years ago for me, my father had a stroke and eventually passed on from this life. But even in that, even in some of the darkest times, you know, the Lord gave me hope of eternity. You know, these few years that we have, like you're getting ready to turn 40, get ready to get to that mid-40 range and tell me how you feel. You know, I look at some of these guys and like, wow, I've really not done what I should have done in some cases. We can always demean it, but there's always hope in God. That's what I love about it, is no matter how low your story is, he's able to take you and lift you up far above the shadows and set your feet on higher ground. And you may be in the miry clay, like the psalmist said, but it'll set your feet on the rock to stay.
Yes.
And what a blessing it is to know that. So take heart. Don't give up. Be resilient. You have a reason to be resilient. God is with you. He's for you. And you have hope. You have hope now. In this world, you have hope. There's hope right now. You'll make it through it. You'll make it past it. And, you know, I'll tell you what. Get around some people that are for you, too.
Yes.
In ministry.
Very important. Yes.
It's super important. I could talk about this forever. But, you know, I'm trying to think. I used to have a message entitled "The Three Types of People," and you know, the first kind is your confidants. The confidants, Taylor. I mean, they're up with you on the Mount of Olivet. You know, they're down with you in the prison cell. You know, I mean, that's how it is. That's Peter, James, and John. You know. And then you got the people that are your constituents. You know, your constituents, they're kind of with you, if you will. But they're going to hang on to Taylor as high as they think Taylor can take them, or as high as they think Clint can take them. So they're going to, you know, if you're doing real well in your business, you're doing real well in your church, or whatever you're doing, they're going to hang around. They're going to be with you for a while, but you're only going to have them for a while. They're just constituents. They're here today, unfortunately gone tomorrow. And then, of course, you got your comrades. You know, your comrades, you know, they're not for you. They're not for what you're for, but they're kind of for what you're against. I don't know if you've heard this before or not. So you can kind of get with your comrades, and they don't even believe the way you do. They don't work what you're saying. You got nothing in common, but you start talking about a certain area, and they're just ready to fight.
They're
ready to go. You know, if you want to hear someone just get fired up, you call them on the phone. I mean, that's your comrade. But your constituents are only with you for a short time. They're for what you're for, but they're not for you. These are like ministry lessons here, just general lessons. There are people that are for what you're for, but they're not for you. They're not for Taylor, but they're for what you're for. But confidants are people that are not only for what you're for, but they're for you. And those are rare. If you find 2 or 3 of them in life, it's a precious thing. If you find a Taylor who's a close friend, if you find, whoever that's close by that's a confidant. If you got thrown in jail tomorrow, they'd come give you a piece of bread. They'd come and see you at the prison. That's your confidants. And find people that that are like that and get around them, because they're not only for you, they're for what you're for. It's a great thing. And I'll tell you, in life and ministry, it's vital to have them.
Absolutely.
That's a whole topic. We could do a whole podcast on the 3 types of people.
Oh, yes. And I'm sure as we're talking about this, for those of you who are listening as well, everyone's got those specific people as you were talking now in mind.
Yeah.
And you guys were probably thinking, I need to pull those people who are confidants a little bit closer. Yeah. Those other ones, I may need to push a little bit farther outside of my...
Kind of scoot them away. The thing is because in church, it's a lot of constituents. Many times they've got agendas. They're there for a certain reason, all kinds of reasons. This is my perspective, my experience is that unfortunately in many, many places that the far greater majority of people that might be coming to a congregation have different agendas as to why they're there. Various reasons. Some like the music, some like the preaching. Some are just there because their wife is there. Some it's a popular thing. You could go through the whole rigmarole, and you find as a leader that certain people are just here today, gone tomorrow. And that's okay. Because you love them when they come and you love them when they go. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. But you recognize that they have a purpose and that maybe in some way you've been able to sow in their life. But you also have to recognize the confidants, because they're for you. They're for what you're for. It's hard at times, if you're a pastor or a leader, because you naturally are a confidant. You're just naturally. I'm for Taylor. I want Taylor to do well. I want so-and-so to be blessed. Mm-hmm. I want him to, what I'm saying? That's just naturally, that's just kind of who you are as an individual, as a person. But you find that's not really how it is in many ways, many walks of life. And please understand, I'm not knocking the church. The church is the greatest organization on the planet. Please understand. I was just mentioning that within this, that there are different types of people within any organization.
Yes.
Just things to be cognizant of. But get close to somebody that is for you, for what you're for. They're confidant. They're encouraging you. They love you. They want to see the best in your life. I have that. I will tell you, let me tell you this. Let me tell this to the men. And we don't realize this sometimes. Mm-hmm. Our greatest confidants is our family. I had to be in ministry for a number of years, Taylor, before I realized that my greatest confidant was my wife, was my family. My son, they're my greatest confidants to be in ministry. Nobody is more for me than they are. It's a wonderful thing. And sometimes we put our family down the road a little bit. And really we should bring them a little bit closer. Because when it comes to ministry and doing the work of the Lord, they're key. They're just key. Yeah.
It's so good. I kind of felt that impressed upon me, Clint. Yeah, for somebody out there that was hearing everything we were saying, but I felt like there was just going to be somebody out there that really needed to hear that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. There is an actual hope. And again, one of the tangible things we can do, guys, if you've heard any of my lives, my podcasts, my reels, anything on social, I talk about it 1,000 times. Your circle around you matters so much. The people I always say it like this, that God's essentially given us the paintbrush in our hands. And although he is God there, I said this on a recent podcast, there's even some things that God actually can't do. I remember when the Holy Spirit whispered to me, he said, I can't make you read the word, which would help you. I can't make you go to the gym, which I think we're actually both about to do after we get on this podcast. Like, I can't make you eat healthy. God is many times bringing the right people in front of us. But what are we doing? Are we bringing them into our circle? Are we pushing them away? God's many times bringing the right voices, the right wisdom. He's trying so much to help. And maybe he's brought this podcast before you today. If you're watching on YouTube or you're listening many other streams, that I believe that God did not bring this to you by accident. If we learn to live on purpose, the things that we say are accidents, that life is always against us, really, I think a lot of times, Clint, it's just a lack of wisdom.
Yeah.
And so he's given us his word, right? He's given us his word, you guys. He's given us wisdom. He's given us great things like YouTube and podcasts to where we can, as you talked about in one of the 5 things, be constantly learning. Wisdom is out there. It declares in the Psalms. We got to reach out.
Right.
We got to take it. You got to find the right people who are going to be for you. And a lot of times you'll know they're the right people because sometimes they'll say the hard thing that you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
But you know that they were right. That's because they're really for you. Like they're willing to risk the friendship and say something that's maybe a little bit tough, but it's like, listen, hey, you may be going down a path that, buddy, it's not the right path for you.
Right.
So
That's
I've learned to take those people into my life. And Clint, for me, I want to thank you. I've told my dad and many people this, I've always loved coming to your church. I always, honestly, more than even just ministering, I think it was just, and my wife knows this as well. Every time when I think of Clint, I always said he's maybe the most just authentic, real guy there was. Like Clint is Clint. And that's the best thing that I can almost maybe even say about a person, especially someone that was in ministry and somebody that I know that is like, I know what I'm getting from Clint. There's nothing that he's hiding. A very trustworthy, honorable person. So Clint, I want to thank you. This has been a blast. We're the type of people that both of us could talk for absolutely for hours on so many things. So who knows? Maybe at the beginning of next year, some other time, I can have you on again and we can talk about all those other topics that I know we both love to talk about. But Clint, I wanted to thank you. Wanted to thank your heart, man, and your messages. It's just awesome to see what God has done, what he's doing, and what I believe he's really going to continue to do for you, man, just for your family. And who knows what's to come, what God has up his sleeves for all of us. So I'm believing the best.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I've got a wonderful podcast. I love to see it, and I'll continue to watch it. And I'm excited about this. Maybe we gave a few tidbits of information and encouragement to people as they see maybe clips of this on Instagram or other, that they'll be blessed in some way and it'll be effective. And I just pray whatever we do, that it's effective and it touches people and it helps them in some way. And that's, someone said to me years ago, we talked about ministry, just general life. And he said, ministry can be summed up in one word, and that word is people. And it's so true. It's so true. God loved the world. He gave his son for people. So great being here. Love you. Love your family. Appreciate you, what you're doing for the work of God and for your business is great. And I'll probably join you in your business before too long. I just got to get some extra cash to pile in there, and we can go forward. But I appreciate you, man. If you need anything, let me know, and hope you have a great evening.
Absolutely. You too, Clint. You guys, find yourself some Clints. Find yourself some Clints in your life. I'm telling you, real down-to-earth people that are full of character, integrity, and hope. You're one of the most bubbly, just joyful people always. It sparks me up. It gets me fired up to be around somebody like you, Clint. So, sir, so awesome to have you. You guys, we have just wrapped up, I believe now, our 4th episode of the Place with TM podcast. We're going to be continuing to roll. You guys have a fantastic evening. Until then, I'll see you on the other side.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.